All set?
Thank you.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. First on the agenda is to review August 10th, 2021 minutes. Motion we accept it as well. You got a second? Second. All in favor? Kind of missed oh, yeah. Oh, that's right, yeah. Forgot, yeah. To review August 24th, 2021 warrant. You guys got a chance to look at this?
Especially for that as well.
This one?
For the shade.
Oh, yeah.
Warrant to be accepted as presented.
All in favor? Next up, red zone wire.
It's on your laptop.
I see that. Now, we got for us tonight.
We probably can't hear you from way over there.
Good evening, Red Zone. You can hear.
Michael, can you hear them?
No, well, I can hear just a little bit. Would they like me to begin?
Yes, please.
And by the way, I noticed that the screen sharing option is not available. It's disabled by the host.
Let
So
me
if
see if I can fix that.
possible to enable that, then I can show you a few things while I'm speaking.
I don't know, I've never had that problem. Try that.
Great.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, the floor is all yours.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to join you today. And my name is Michael Priscillo. I'm from Red Zone. I want to thank Danielle and members of the Baldwin Select Board for inviting me to talk to you a little bit today about broadband. Broadband is a very hot subject, obviously, and what do we think?
See a map.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to walk through a little bit, but I want to talk first about Red Zone. We've been a broadband provider in Maine. We're located in the mid-coast town of Rockland. For the last 7 years, we've been building fixed wireless networks in communities. We have 75 locations today that we provide services to thousands and thousands of Maine households in about 150 different Maine communities. I say 75 sites, that means that we operate network transmission sites on 75 towers that are located in Maine. And there are about 350 towers in Maine, so there's plenty more for us to operate on. Fixed wireless is an interesting technology because it doesn't involve putting wires down roads or connecting wires in homes. We put our transmission equipment on a tower with a fiber optic connection at that tower, and then our system distributed via radio network to receivers on individual customers' homes. So while it takes a few months for us to plan and launch a site on a tower, as soon as that's activated, we can install equipment at virtually all the homes in the community that are within the signal range of that tower. So for the speed to deploy and get broadband to people's homes, it is substantially faster and certainly a fraction of the expense of, say, fiber optic programs, which are pretty in vogue right now. I mean, everyone wants fiber optics every home. So they really dig in and see what the price looks like. And even when, the federal government or the state government subsidizes the build out of those, the operating costs for them on an annual basis is pretty high. And in small population areas, it's tough to make them economically viable, even if someone else pays for them with tax dollars. But that's the other challenge is that it just takes so darn long to get one of those projects built. But it's out there, and certainly communities are looking at those options. And if they have about a 5-year time horizon and a lot of patience and put a lot of effort in, they may be able to bring fiber optic connections to a small town in Maine. In the meantime, we do things a little differently. We are privately held companies. We are funded by private equity groups that's all based in Maine as well. And because our cost to deploying equipment is so low, we're able to offer both affordable prices and make our system economically viable. So I'm going to take you to this map. This is something called what we call the RRD planning tool, which is allows me to put a lot of different data on the screen as you take a look. So I'm going to kind of come in and get to Baldwin. What this map shows is this is a map of the state, and it contains, and the red dots are every D911 address, so I can see where they are. So this kind of gives me something that's useful, but let's kind of get right down to the town and look at Baldwin itself. Okay, so if you can see on the screen, and you're seeing Baldwin, and you see the red dots.
Yeah.
Okay, so these red dots, and I think that represents, if anyone's in public safety, you might recognize the red dots as being, where your household locations are in the E911 database. While this is not 1,000% accurate, it's pretty darn close because it uses all the state data, although you may have some more updated data. What I can tell you about Baldwin that I know is that it's about 36.5 square miles of land area. It's somewhere around 1,550 population, maybe 700 housing units in the town, and it's it's a town that's not highly populated, so relatively low population area. Things you certainly know. Mostly land area, not a lot of water, in the sense of how much of the total town land area is actual land. And what I'm also going to show here are all the towers that are located in there. So this popped up. These are towers from all different companies. What this tool allowed me to do is show you what wireless coverage could look like from any one of these towers. So if I just use an example and show this, and even before I do that, I'll show you, I'm going to put up some black dots that will pop up here in a second. And these show all of the household locations that people that have visited Red Zone in Baldwin and requested service, which we don't provide in that town today. But, there's already been a fairly significant amount of interest that's been shown that's pretty well distributed around the town. In certain other towns, you can see over here in our Wyndham, it's been extraordinary, and that's an area where we have some service today. Let's get rid of those because I don't want this to become too busy. All right, so if I just pick a spot, now, folks, if you could tell me on this map loosely where you have okay service and where there's a lot of people that have poor internet service. If we think of this as a spot, what part of town, are there any particular areas that are worse for service than others?
Yeah. Can you see the Route 107 area?
Yeah.
From
top to bottom?
From like the Sebago line.
Yeah, that crooked line is the Sebago Baldwin, right side?
Yeah, right there, right in that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Now, you know that you have a tower, I'm sure you've seen it in your town.
Yeah.
It's FCC 104-5602 volt. And that tower is, I'll tell you a little bit about it because you know it well, I'm sure. It is 1,250 feet above ground, peak of Bald Mountain. Okay? And what that tower tells me is that when I click on it like this, it tells me how many households. If I was to put a radio equipment on that tower at a reasonably good height, that it would reach 4,687 households. Now that, and you can see that the coverage, the pink shaded area around there is pretty significant outside of the town of Baldwin. But you can also see that, this radio network would, from a single tower, that's just from one. Now, that tower is owned by Hearst Corporation, and we've had some discussions with them. They're somewhat reluctant to allow an operator for broadband services to put equipment on it. Although, you know, it's a little hard work, maybe they would allow it. And I will tell you that this one tower is interestingly covers most of the household. So you can see in the area that you described to me, which is up on the roof, it appears that some of the area that is in the most need would not be served. So I'm going to look at a few more. I'm going to turn this one off and say, all right, if we can't use the Hearst tower, I'll tell you, if you look at this, you can see there's a really nice assortment of other towers around the town. And so if I went to one in Cornish, that one would do a pretty good job on the sort of south side. One from Hiram would do a decent amount on the west side. There's a few others. And so typically what I would tell you, this one in particular in CCI Baldwin, which is Crown Castle, that does a really nice job up on this side. So I would think, all right, well, what if I did two, and I used both the Baldwin Tower and that one? That's pretty good. That's pretty darn good coverage. But what's interesting about wireless is that you really want to have the services, the radio frequencies coming from different directions, because that, in effect, would provide people, no matter sort of what their unique situation is of their home, multiple locations that they could connect to. And then there's this FCC tower in east of it. Let's find that one.
While you're doing that, Mike, I have a question for you.
Please, by all means.
So this pink area, what height on the WMGW tower was that using?
That would assume a height in the upper quadrant, so the top 25% of the tower. And so that's usually not possible. I don't have controls of that directly, but in this tool, although when we get into planning. But I think that, you know, what we see in this model, and that's really what it is, it's a rapid wireless broadband coverage modeling tool. We're able to see that because of the proximity of towers on the peripheral of the community, that there are many ways to shoot into it, and there are likely availability on most of these towers. And we may be able to sort of solve the problem with more than one approach. So let me give you some other information that's helpful. All right, a tower costs us about $100,000 to put up a tower, on an existing tower, between the permitting, the equipment, the construction, the full load of that. And then the question is, well, what can that tower do? We would put a 10 gigabit fiber circuit at the base of that tower that connects to the radio, straight to fiber, right up into the transmitters. And each one of the radios on there can support up to 250 households. And then the question is, what would those households be able to get for service? The state of Maine recently created a new standard for broadband, which is 100 megabits per second download and 100 megabits upload. They call it the fully symmetrical. The new equipment that we are installing today is capable of doing a multiple of those speeds. So it's safe to say that the equipment we could put in would meet the main brand new broadband standard of 100 by 100. And then at the individual customer's homes, we install another radio, whoever subscribes. And so we would hope that with 3 radios on a tower, we could provide services to up to 750 households in 360 degrees around that tower. If we were using towers on the perimeter of the town and just shooting the signals in from the outside, we would use a smaller number of radios on each one, reducing the cost. But again, the idea is if you have 700 households, you really only need 1 tower so everybody can connect to it, because this would be enough capacity to deliver customers those speeds. I could tell you nobody needs 100 by 100 megabits per second. Nobody. Okay? Maybe we have a hospital or I don't know. I can't even, we don't know who would use 100 by 100. 100 downloads maybe. That's if you have a really big, maybe an apartment or something with multiple units. But an average household uses about 10 to 15 megabits per second, and they use about 2 or 3 uploads. Aside from when the kids are downloading Xbox games or something, they might keep up to maybe 8 or 9. But I can tell you this new main broadband standard is substantially kind of overkill for what they think everybody needs or what that's what they're saying. But that said, our newest technology can meet those requirements. We just did a pilot in Rockland, Maine, from a great tower in town. We tested all over town, and we're getting speeds of 500 megabits per second consistently at almost every location we tested. So we're excited about what this next generation of fixed wireless technology can do. And I don't think speed or capacity will be the issue. And then it becomes an issue of affordability. So, in a community with the median household income that Baldwin has today, cost is a factor as much as it is in most every rural Maine community. People can't afford to pay $100 a month for a broadband connection. Many do, but if you look at the data on the number of Maine households that could get internet but don't have it, the reason they don't have it is it's too expensive. And so making it affordable is really important. We're a participant in the Emergency Broadband Subsidy Program, the EBB program from the FCC, and we have hundreds of customers. Many were our existing customers who got eligible for that program and are receiving their broadband 100% subsidized by the federal government. So residents are participants. We've done projects with the Connect Maine Authority historically over the years. But for the most part, because it's so quick and inexpensive for us to build out these systems, we can usually make them work economically even without outside funding from, government subsidy programs. But so I'll kind of leave it at that. I would say that if the community wanted to get involved and the community would like to bring this to the town, some of the things we like to say are, while there could be a capital commitment, and it could come from anywhere, to help get this off the ground, because I can tell you, Baldwin was not a town that we have on our radar to build ourselves. We have about 100 sites we're planning to build right now. These in Baldwin or not, don't happen to be on our list today. And so with the catalyst of a partnership, it could attract us to do it here. And what's important to towns when I talk to them about getting involved in broadband is, they would say, well, we could raise some money one time, but we don't want to have ongoing liability. We don't want to have requirements that people subscribe. And if something better comes along, we want to keep our options open that it's not exclusive, such that, hey, maybe we do get $2 million to build fiber. having done a project with Red Zone should not preclude us from doing that too. We thrive on competition, which means I build this stuff in communities where there's cable everywhere. And there's one thing I can tell you that unites Mainers more than anything else is how much they dislike the cable company. And so every month, I would say 10% of their customers who take anything, they would come from Spectrum or Comcast. And for a whole lot of reasons, but, you know, that said, we don't really go where there's nothing else available. We can go, and, you know, communities always benefit when, not just when they have one internet provider, but when they have multiple choices for consumers at different price points, at different speeds, they can use their needs. And this is just a quick kickstart, right? This is where you get broadband to almost the entire community in one shot, in the quickest way, something that's done in 6 to 9 months from thinking about it to it actually being done, and at a, you know, cost where, you know, if you stepped up and said, let's build out a budget for this whole project, and, you know, Red Zone paid half of that cost, and we knew that we would have a few $100,000 to contribute one time to get this here and get it here in 6 to 9 months, we would do it. So, please, I mean, I can talk all day about, you know, Maine and broadband, but it's kind of best to just kind of take what I've said and then, you know, shoot me any questions they want, and I'm happy to, you know, go deeper. And if there's an interest in going forward, we'd have some engineers look at this and put a more detailed proposal together.
Any questions?
Just go up there.
Yeah.
This microphone or that one?
That one.
That one.
That one.
That one. Too high tech. My name is Norman Blake. I've been bugging these folks for much of a year about Red Zone. I think it's a good idea. Previously, I served on the planning board most of 3 decades as chairman. I was involved in writing the conditional use permit for Channel 8. I can't quote it chapter and verse, but I will tell you that one of the conditions that WMTW has is that they shall rent tower space to qualified people subject to electromagnetic capability at market rates. They shall. Now, you've got a whole new bunch of people in there. The station manager is different. The engineering staff is different. They may not remember that, but that is a condition.
Well, we talked to a really nice guy who I think is responsible for the management of that tower, and he said, basically, you know, New York will never go for that.
New York bought it when they signed on the dotted line, period.
All right. Well, listen, we're happy to navigate that with them, and I don't think that they are, you know, when you own a tower and you have your transmission equipment on it and it's owned by the company and it's not really on your P&L as a business, you know, it's in a separate box somewhere, you know, they just don't want everybody messing with it if they can avoid it. And so if they dissuade people from applying and they dissuade the town from holding them to some of those commitments, you know, they will. But, you know, it's always best, and we have master lease agreements with most of the companies around the community that have towers, whether it's Crown Castle or American Tower Corporation or U.S. Cellular, that own towers in this area, even some private tower owners. We can get on any tower so long as it's structurally sound and it's not loaded to capacity. We have great rates. It's not a problem. These FCC towers that are owned by broadcasters, they can be a little trickier. But that said, that's the best one. And they may say, well, yeah, you can be on it, but you can't go over 100 feet. Okay, so if I was to show you what this would look like if we put the equipment at 100 feet on the tower, it would be a fraction of the households that would be able to be reached. So I suggest we working with them and press them on whether, they will legitimately let a provider come on that's serving the public good, which is an important resource for the community, supporting education, telehealth, community connection, quality of life, public safety, you name it. I mean, this is, broadband has already been pretty well defined as an essential utility, whether it's a municipal utility or it's a consumer, think of it like water and electricity. Now, it's still in the mind of people as a utility, and it has tremendous value. And I don't know how a town, goes too far without taking some action to make sure that the community residents have, what they need. It's sort of a survival stuff. All right. So, Norman, thank you for the update there on the actual approval for that tower and the tower owner's requirement to lease space. Do they have to give you a share of the revenues that they get from?
No, they do not. No, they do not. And that was specifically done. I will tell you that that's not your fight. They made an agreement via their conditional use permit with the town of Baldwin. Our selectmen are the ones who need to be enforcing that and holding their feet to the fire. My thought is that it doesn't take too much smarts to say that if you can only go 100 feet, if you can only go 200 feet, which doesn't even clear the ridge to the east, that you're not upholding the useful part of the agreement. One thing I do know, I knew the engineering staff at the time. That tower is grossly overbuilt. Hearst Argyle had a whole lot of money to spend. That thing has weight and wind load capacity to spare. There is specific room in the building. I know you guys don't need it, but they were anticipating lots of customers. The fact that they have...
we do need a significant expense is a weather enclosure cabinet with backup power and a variety of things that we use when we bring on site to go to the tower, which is what runs up to the $100,000.
Well, they have a whole house UPS there that runs everything, including the television transmitter, no less. And when that runs out, they got 255 kilowatt Caterpillar diesels, and the blocks are kept so hot that you can't hold your hand on them. They've got 6 seconds to run them.
Well, it's one thing for them to have them there. It's another thing to allow a third party to power their equipment off those standby generator backup systems. If you think that that's in that if we get them over the hump, right, we get them to the point where they would reasonably consider having it there. And we talked to them, they're nice people, they're just resistant, and they didn't seem to feel they were required to do this when they spoke to us. So it may be that a refresher letter from the town, from the Board of Selectmen, could be helpful in stimulating that conversation to move to a more successful outcome. Okay. Because you want us there. I mean, I'm not trying to get on that tower for our business purposes independently, but I can tell you our company and network can do the best job for your community if we can have access to that tower. And if the town has the right and has required the tower builder to share that space at market rates, we know what market rates are, and so there's no question about that. We lease tower space from every company in the country, so that operates the main. So there's no argument about what market rates are. And if they charge us that uselessly backup battery system, I will tell you this, and this is very important. 90% of all internet outages associated with wireless are related to the CMP grid. Okay, that's it. And we know that, because customers call and say, my internet's out, I say, well, your power's out too. But it's the nature of it. But so long as an individual has backup power, like a generator at their home, standby generator, and the standby generator power at the tower, we have 99.9% reliability. And so it's rarely ever interrupted. And as I said, most outages are related to power. And in Maine, as you know, Maine has the most frequent power outages of any state in the country and the longest duration of power outages of any state in the country. So, it's a big problem when you depend on it, and I'm sure you know this. I've been involved in Go ahead.
Another thing, CMP has 850 electrical meters in town. Now, some buildings have more than one, I'm sure, but that's about how many people we have. And I think you'll also be picking up much of Cornish and Teesa Falls if you go there. One other tower I spoke to, there's a tower in South Hiram, just to the southwest of the Channel 8 tower, the MTW tower. That's owned by a friend of mine. I spoke to Paul last week, and I said, hey, we're talking about red zone. And he said, holy cow, I wish they'd come up on my tower. So.
All right, so there are two towers there, right?
There's, if you go on the Channel 8 tower and then go southwest, your first tower, you basically cross the river and you go up on a peak. Are you there? Looking at your map?
Let me see if this gets me there. You seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
We're suggesting that it's this one.
No.
Compact, Cornish, and FCC Hiram. So let's go take a look at these towers a little more closely. And you can tell me if I'm in the right place.
Well, let me get a little closer here. So we need to go to the southwest.
Yep, I'm down there.
Okay. Where's your mousey?
It's coming. Okay. So you think you see my mouse here, is it this one straight to the west?
Yes, that's the one. Wiggle your mouse. Paul Alberghini's got 3 or 4 cell carriers on that. It's about 270 feet. It's an old 4-legged AT&T tower, and it was built to withstand nuclear blast. Anyway, that'll be a slam dunk if you want it.
Okay, so this one is trying to let's see my let's get rid of.
I think it's wireless con, but his email ends in wireless con. It may have something to do with that.
All right, do we think it's these towers here? There are 2 towers on that tower, on that little ridge?
Yeah, he's got a little one, yeah.
Okay. So this is what I see. So the Saco River and River Road, and then you come over here, and if you're following me on there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where the clearing is up there. Isn't there a tower?
Yeah.
And you can see the whole darn thing from West Baldwin.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one right there. You're on it.
Yeah.
Like I say, that one's a slam dunk. If you need to get in touch with me, if you can't find Paul's info, you can get in touch with me through Danielle.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
That's it.
That's another option, and that one would certainly be there. I'm going to zoom out and just show what that coverage would look like. I think this is an awful lot of data to push around.
Yep. Okay, well, that's all I have for you, so I'll shut up and sit
Thank
down
you
now.
so much.
Thank you.
All right, and what I'm showing you on the screen here is from that tower you just described to me. If we were to turn it on and put equipment on it, that's the coverage that we get, and unfortunately, that by itself, while it's a good tower for the west side and the south portion of Baldwin, there's an awful lot of it that wouldn't be served from that single location. But I appreciate that one, because if I was doing 3 or 4, I would definitely consider using that one as well. Are there any more questions that I can answer just this introductory meeting?
I'm all set. Anybody else?
Well, yes.
Got one for you.
Yeah, I want to be sure I understood what you said. What you're asking for is a chunk of money, you don't know how much, in order to get this service involved in. You're looking for some entity to invest in it. Is that right?
First off, the process looks like an expression of interest in developing a proposal. A lot of towns will submit Connect Main grants for $50,000 for a feasibility study to just study the problem. I would not advise that. I'll do a feasibility study on this network at no cost. But if you're interested in this approach, we would put a whole plan together, an engineering plan and a budget on what it would cost and a timeline. We'd look at that, and it's based on how many people, so we'd make some assumptions about how many people would sign up and what the revenue would look like, so that we could determine how much we could reasonably justify investing in private capital, because we have to pay it back. And if the cost of the project was higher, we would look for a contribution from the town to get the project on. And that contribution could come from a Connect Main grant, it could come from federal CARES money, it could come from the county. There's a lot of money sloshing around right now for broadband infrastructure. It is the hottest infrastructure subsidy program I've ever seen. I mean, probably once in a lifetime. You may be able to build 3 networks with the money that you may be able to get for this based on, rent and on the cost. But I'll just tell you that the cost of us doing it is a fraction. If I said it was 10% the cost of doing something with wires to every home, that would be a generous estimate on my part. It's generally been less than that. But all said and done, yes, I think that's the right approach. You can look at municipal type projects in other parts of the state. There are many different ways to select it, but you have to understand what's most important. And to me, for any town, and I've talked to let's just say 100 Maine communities who have similar broadband problems and are looking for solutions, is they don't want to sign up for things that would cause them to increase taxes and have ongoing operating and maintenance expenses that are unknown. They don't want to have long-term commitments, but they would like, in most cases, would be willing to get some capital together from a variety of sources to be able to bring a service to their town quickly. And I suggest that you schedule all the providers to do presentations like this and get them to tell you what they could do and what it would cost and how long it will take. And put them all on a chart with the pluses and minuses and see how it turns out. But I don't want you to just jump with us, because we can do it faster, better, and cheaper, and offer a lower cost to your community members for broadband. Even though I'm pretty confident that's how it will turn out, I think it behooves you to talk to as many providers that would be willing to come to your town and increase or expand broadband services to all members of town. And so, yes, the answer to your question is, there would be some, based on the final cost of the project, it would be a one-time capital contribution to the town. And, you know, in red zone space, another way that we also do it that we think is differentiated is that we build it first, so we understand what the town's financial commitment would be, but we don't require the town to make any contribution. So after the project is completed, rather than paying for something and waiting for years for them to maybe do it, maybe not, and then not have much recourse to get your money back or hold them accountable. In our case, it's a full pay-for-performance model where, you know, if we don't build it correctly and it doesn't meet all the requirements and specifications that we said it would, or deliver the speed and performance and coverage, you know, the town's not obligated to pay for it. And so I don't know much other ways that Red Zone could approach the community and try to be a good partner, but I believe that getting services to the community quickly, affordably, and offering low-cost services to the home with what's technically considered by the state of Maine to be the new broadband standard would be is a pretty attractive value proposition.
All right, well, I think Mike, it was a good presentation, and I think it will be a starting point for maybe some further discussions here by the board. And,
excellent.
And,
thank you so much for hosting me and allowing me to take up so much of your time tonight.
Good, thank you.
And you know how to reach me if any more questions come up. I'm happy to continue the conversation by email, have more Zoom calls, or even come down and have a little face-to-face chat.
Good, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Norm, what's 3/4, that 7,500 feet, or 750 feet, is 3/4 of the tower?
The tower itself is about 1,600, base to the bottom of the pylon, usable tower. So they got, a quadrant is 400 feet, roughly. The other thing, Bob, just for reference, the bottom platform sits at 500, the top platform's 900. Give you an idea of what height from what you can see, you know, out in the world.
Okay.
All right. Next thing, Cumberland County Justin.
I mentioned to Danielle, I don't know if you want to shuffle the agenda and do your vote, because tree growth application, commitment, and then you've got the overlay, commitment and overlay kind of go together.
Okay.
All one discussion, so I didn't know if you wanted to do that, or I can do whatever you want.
Yeah, we can do that. The vote of fiscal year change. Do that next. So,
I move that we change the fiscal year from the current 1 January to 31 December to a fiscal year of 1 July to 30 June.
do I have a second? All in favor? All right.
I was wondering I'd be up and then down and then back up, so. All right, the first thing we have is a tree growth failure to renew. So I'd like to have you sign this letter to go out, and we are assessing them their first $500 penalty as well. tax supplement for the $500.
What property do they have in Tree Road?
Enough.
More than that.
Make a copy of that, we'll mail the letter. Okay. So, we'll move on to discussion about commitment. Typically, in times past, we've had a meeting and discussed the overlay, ahead of time. I had a general idea where you guys wanted to be, and I hope I guessed correctly. So, as usual, I'll give you 3 different options. So, to simplify, 'cause I do have the actual paperwork if you want to see that, but I figured I'd do it this way. This gives you 3 different options. Option 1, 2, and 3 gives a mill rate of $13, $13.03, $13.05. Giving you the overlays that correspond to those actual mill rates. And down below that, just a typical savings on $100,000 worth of value for the taxpayer based upon those mill rates. They also included, the second sheet there shows you what we spent last year on abatements. So we abated a total of $1,177,000 for a total tax abatement of $16,030.74.
Yeah, I was glad because of the rebound, right?
Right, a little heavier than normal, but
Right, yeah.
we held the line pretty good for a lot of them as well, as far as denials, things like that.
Yeah.
So, and those are on there, you can see them as denials. Basically, we gotta keep a record for the state when we get the audit, so that's.
Yeah.
But I figured you might want that, because where you're paying your abatements out of the overlay, and that's
Yeah.
how it was voted.
Yeah.
So that might come into your decision on what you wanted to do as far as an overlay and selecting an overlay. I do have the actual tax rate calc sheets if you wanted to look at all of that, but I don't know that you'll glean much more information out of it.
We had a separate line, didn't we, for, for a general assistance, we had a separate line for that.
Yeah.
What was it, $18,000? Low one. My recommendation.
I mean, we get enough to cover, we paid out $16,030, and at the mill rate of $13 that's gonna be almost $27,000, so that would cover it again. So, we're only talking $3 from one option to the other.
Right. Not a huge difference.
No.
It is helpful to the taxpayer, for sure.
I'd make the motion to use option 1.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? That's one.
Here we go. So then what we'll do is I have them all prepared, whichever option you chose. So here's your tax rate calc sheet based on the $13 mill rate, $26,791.86 on the overlay. You've got the complete allocation, which shows you county, municipal, and school, which, we'll get a copy of all of this anyway. This is your preliminary warrant and certificates. say preliminary, because we don't know the book and page until she actually runs the commitment. So this will give her the authorization to move forward. Once she's done, she'll send me the PDFs, I throw in the book and page, and I'll be back. And have you sign the actual formal document.
Okay.
So there are multiple places on here that need to be signed. If you want, I'm more happy to show you where they are, yeah. Sure, a little sticky. Look at that.
Okay, I missed it.
Yeah.
It's a little sticky on there. Now, this one says Gary Brown on it, that, that's gonna miss that? Okay.
Sorry for that.
I was gonna,
No.
make sure.
We can pencil it in for now, like I said, I apologize, so. So see, I did the same thing when reviewing them. Try that times 5 commitments, right? Did I get everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll correct that on the file. I'll make a copy. Yep. Oh, here. Yeah, that's right. You guys want copies of them as well?
Yeah.
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 I think that's all I got. Then get into your other discussions that you guys have.
Personal property discussion about,
I think that was something Deb wanted to talk about.
yeah, how we go about collecting.
You want her in here?
Come here, Robert.
Yeah. Deborah.
Your turn.
So you want to know how we're gonna collect on delinquent payments for,
Yeah, well, we're having a major problem with the campers at the campground.
yeah.
We're getting attitudes and refusals that they don't wanna pay because they don't feel that they shouldn't have to pay. We sent, 30-day notice to a taxpayer from the campground. He sent me a notice back saying that he wasn't there anymore, so he didn't think that he should pay that property, so I forwarded the email to Ben. Ben said he was there April 1st. They discussed it, he agreed to pay it, didn't want to, but he paid it. But he didn't pay it until after the tax lien actually went out. So he was paying the 30-day notice. So I got the notice, the money 2 weeks later after the tax liens had already been out and recorded. So I sent him a nice message saying, you paid the 30-day notice, but you waited too long and now it's a tax lien. so then he says, well, I paid what I was supposed to, you're lucky you got that, if you have a problem with it, I'll contact my lawyer. So, you know, the money was $45 after the 30-day notice. I mean, you've got your costs, you've got your certified mails, you've got your interest from that day, and, you know, and it was $45, but I mean, why take somebody like that to a small claims court for $45 when, after all, you gotta have lawyer fees, town fees, and my time to leave here, and it's just ridiculous. So that's one thing. Then you get your personal property. We have no ground to stand on with personal property, because we can't lien personal property.
Yeah.
So you got people that are 3 or 4 years behind on personal property, and they say, I don't care, but you can't do anything about it. So how do you enforce that?
Ben, do you have either?
Yep, so your personal property, can be pursued in court, and the stipulation in the law, which is your side, so you can verify for me, is that it needs to be itemized and identifiable, which is one thing that we do. And yeah, I have not found a court case where we may put on, 2018 M&E, machinery and equipment, F&F, furniture and fixtures, but we're able to back into what that total might be for, say, 2018, right? So I can show you an itemized, whether the court would accept that, or it needs to be itemized actually on the property card. It's not gonna be itemized on the commitment, so I would assume you're okay, but we can back into what we're actually assessing for. When we do estimates, and there's one entity which we probably are discussing, and we probably all know who we're talking about, which is now completely itemized within our system. So, they've been non-filer for several years. There was an inspection done back in 2018, and so with photos and off Facebook pages, and I love when people post things on Facebook, thank you. So, as far as we're concerned, we're accurate.
Okay.
Until they file and say otherwise, that is what it is. So yes, you would have to chase them through small claims. Campers, one issue that I would probably identify is that technically you can't lien them. They're not real estate. They're not real property. They are still personal property, even though we keep track of them on the real property camera. It's easier because there's decks involved and porches when people put them on, but as far as the legality and chasing them, the actual camper is still personal property. But again, when we go through, not only have we identified the camper being there, we have VIN numbers when they're available, sometimes you can't read them. But we're grabbing everything that we possibly can identify on that lot to the correct person, as far as we know from the campground owners, who the right person is. Sometimes wires get crossed or whatever, we do abatements and whatnot, but you still have identifiable information to pursue it. So again, whether it comes down to cost, that's not my side.
Right.
My side is just to make sure that you guys know we still have to assess it.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as the cost of go to court would be, worth it. But we're putting it to collection agency, and it goes towards a credit.
Yeah, I don't want to step out of it, because we have 3 elected officials and 1 elected official, and the 4 of you can hash that one out, that's not my side of it.
I think, Jim, MMA says, recommends the small claims court path.
Okay.
And, some of our personal property accounts that are delinquent would probably be low returns for the time invested, but some of them could be significant. And a couple of them could be $1,000. Well, I think we need to get smart on this small claims court process, and it's going to be something new for you, Deb, but we go through a few of them and see how it goes. And I know Gary McNeil used to do that as part of his job.
We did.
If you don't mind talking to him, we can bring him in.
Yeah.
Talk about how he does it. I mean, it was just him, it wasn't a team of lawyers with him. And he was collecting small amounts relatively, so.
Yeah.
I will also just add, where I deal with multiple towns, you're not the only town that's dealing with this right now, especially with campers, because of COVID. There's a lot of people that needed to use their campers last year till a certain time period, so,
Yeah.
but it was there.
Yeah.
So, and they're doing the same thing, you know, by the time you send a letter out from an attorney, you're getting some return. I won't throw a percentage on it, but they are getting people that, oh crap, they're serious, there's an attorney involved, and they come in and pay. You won't get everybody, and the other side of that is eventually you may be writing off some of it, but
Right.
it still needs to be assessed and then processed through.
I think we have enough substantial accounts that we could proceed with first, and then, maybe get on some of the smaller ones later. We can, figure out.
So big first, huh?
The thing is, while we're on camera, because, I mean, I'm sure people are watching, that these substantial accounts who are not filing, if they would follow through and file, contact my office, we've reached out more than once, most of the equipment they have qualifies for Betty. So it would be exempt anyway, and you'd find a lot of this would disappear.
Yeah.
You were saying if they register them?
If they register them, then they don't get assessed for personal property, but if they build decks and buildings on them,
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
that gets assessed.
The camper would still be, as long as they excise the
Right.
camper, that would be
Yeah.
exempt, but yeah, we're still exempt for that.
The state has a tax bulletin on that, so. There's a lot of rules about how you tax campers and trailers.
We're gonna do a different pursuit, because, I mean, you have the one campground here, you know, portion of it, and, you know, I got multiple other towns, so I'm gonna pursue it a different way, this year, and, we're actually gonna support it through NADA book value, and that way, we're gonna be dead on accurate and have another entity that's fully recognized nationwide. This is a valuation process that everybody readily accepts, and that's the numbers we're gonna start with.
They're not doing it when it's Standish chases that out there too.
Oh, I know,
Bad.
yeah.
So you want to give over the talk to Sandy?
No, we were gonna give them a call, we just haven't had a chance to do it, but I mean, I know this campground here in Baldwin, they recommend, you know, they require that your campers be registered
Oh,
before they even let them in.
Right.
But I mean, once they're in, if they're seasonal, they've gotta stay on top of it and make sure that, you know, when it comes time to renew, you renew,
Yeah.
or else you're gonna get personal property tax.
Yeah.
So the other side of that is, we get multiple ways of getting information that we have, so just so you guys are clear, because you actually sworn in as assessors, is, so I've changed things up since I've become director, but we go out there in the fall, all of our campgrounds, I do in the fall. Still assessment date's April 1st, but, to make my time work for me and my staff, where we're shorthanded, we go out there in the fall, typically November. Most people that are hauling out have done so by then. We go through, because it's quite a task to go through and photograph and identify and write down every VIN number. We go through every, you know, list every property that's out there. We're also working with the campground owners as to who's on what site where, so we know who to mail letters out to as far as, right? So we get the information from the campground owner, we get the hands-on physical, which is dominating everything, because I am there and I saw this type of thing. Then, during the winter months, we have this information, the information being put into the system, okay? Meanwhile, come around probably February, we send letters out to the list of owners that the campground has given to us, and we mail the letters out to, you're on J13, you get a letter, please, it's a 706A request. It's already formatted to, you just fill in the blank, tell us what kind of camper you have, any decks, any porches, you tell me everything, you know, doomsday list, basically. And, all goes well, what I saw on site matches what the campground owner told me was there and who it belonged to, and you just told me the exact same thing I saw. Perfect world. Doesn't always work that way, so, you know, then we go through anyway. After all that's put together and in the system and checked, April 1st comes around, we print all the cards all over again, hit the campground when we can. This one here we have difficulty getting into if it's muddy, or snow still on the ground. But all the campgrounds I hit back on April 1st again to verify nobody took anything out. You know, but if you're snowed in, they didn't move.
Right, yeah.
And that's been the kind of blessing here, is because you're either snowed in or mudded in, and most haven't moved out.
Good. How can you, tell the boundary lines from Standish to Baldwin? Is it GPS?
owners showed us where the line was. Yeah, right now, there's actually gonna be, there's a conversation happening this fall, it's already started behind us in the spring, but we both agreed, let's push it out till the fall, because between Standish and County, who owns what.
Yeah.
And it basically, Standish never asked the campground owners, never made contact with them, what lot is on what. They're going from, old planning board maps, kinda drawing the line saying, well, that's our lot. And I'm just telling you, what the campground owner, they're putting it on the list for Baldwin, they showed us where the line was, but I'm more than happy to meet with them out there, and that's what I plan to do.
Yeah.
Good?
Let's do it. Okay, thanks, Deb. All right. Glendale. We've been waiting patiently.
Well, and we were patient too.
Mr.
Moving forward, Chair, do you want us to speak into the microphone?
Sure, yeah.
All right. We have tonight, paper copies, will be familiar to you mostly. A couple of sheets are new. There you go. I'm sorry, Danielle, I thought I had an extra copy.
That's
but
okay,
no.
no problem.
We can email you a copy.
No problem.
Do you want me to speak into the microphone?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Good evening, I'm Aidan Foley with Glendale, and I'm joined by Jim Cohen from Beryl, who just stepped out for a moment. So, Glendale is the developer of a large solar project on land, actually partly in Hiram, partly in Baldwin. And the landowners are P.Y. Estes and Son and Ricky and Sarah Day, two landowners. We are planning to build the project in the next 2 years, hopefully next year. We're still waiting for some things to come together, including financing. And we're here to have another discussion about the prospect of a TIF district. Now, the TIF statute, like the Betty that just was mentioned, is a state statute. In the case of the TIF, the communities have a lot of flexibility over whether or not they provide partial tax exemption to new business investment. And we're here for a couple of reasons. One is to request that a TIF and a CEA be put in place, but secondly, to try and structure that in a way that's most advantageous to the town, which a lot of our data is split because the basis for how much taxes we might pay is for the whole project, and part of it's in Hiram, so a lot of our numbers are for the entire project, not just the part in Baldwin, but we think that the towns can both support the viability of the project and together have about an extra $1 million in payments received over 20 years. And that's essentially the proposal we have. There's a lot of enormous amount of flexibility in what the agreement does. They can be long, they can be short, they can fix the valuation, they can fix the payments, they can be variable. We want to find any way possible to work with the towns to make this work. We need it to make the project work. And at the same point, a lot of the taxes that would get essentially rebated to the state by the town, we want to help the towns keep those taxes.
You can take it right out.
There you go.
My brother is in the music industry, he knows how to work these things, I do not. I might just leave it there as an opening statement. Is there anything you'd like to add, Jim, or at least?
No, I think it'd be great just to hear from the select board questions that we can help answer, and hopes that we can try to find a way to move forward.
sure at this point if we have questions.
No, I don't
Yeah,
either.
and to be honest, this is where we've kind of got to is we've talked amongst ourselves quite a bit about how we might use the TIF. And we just don't see a way to use it in the town. Primarily because of the way the town is structured and where the project is going to be.
So should we move to the discussion?
We can, I think, Mr. Flint, is that right?
Right, yeah.
Mr. Flint, I think one thing to bear in mind is there's enormous flexibility with the geographic description of a TIF. In fact, the district doesn't even have to be contiguous. So, for instance, just, we want to be sensitive that you're better able to understand your needs than we are. But let's say you identify the 3 fire stations as needing improvement and related to the solar project. You could have a non-contiguous TIF district that includes the area that is the footprint of the solar project and the 3 fire stations lots and nothing else, not even the roads in between. But you might want to add a whole lot of other areas. You might want to put Sand Pond inside that district. So the geographic flexibility sits with the community. And, the intuition, which we've encountered in ourselves and encountered in other towns, is that maybe it should be a contiguous area, but that's not a restriction.
Yeah, in the handout that we've provided, Appendix B, and I'm looking at page 15, it might be helpful if we all turn to that page. That is a summary of many of the allowable uses to which TIF revenues can be used. In fact, earlier we heard a presentation about broadband. That is one of the eligible uses. It's not an expense that is tied to the geography of the TIF district. It can be spent anywhere in the town. Recreational trails are not listed here, but ATV trails, snowmobile trails, improvements to those anywhere within the town, those are eligible expenses. I think fire station, public safety type expenses, to the extent there's a tie to the TIF district and through non-contiguous districts, you can get there. Economic development is also a pretty wide open area where the town could spend money. Now the value is having this project come, the limited impact it has on town services is beneficial, the amount of tax revenues it generates, and by creating the TIF district, that's how you essentially save the money. So by not creating the TIF district, the whole town gets a lot less. So in the end, it's sort of a win-win, where you can have a low-impact, high-value project, have some expenditures that help the town, and then a reasonable sharing mechanism that enables the project to come forward. So we'd be happy to work with the town in any way and council to come up with some specific uses, but it seems like there's some pretty wide open areas that you could explore.
We've been through this list a number of times. Just Appendix B material. We've looked at it, and,
Yeah, but I'm still not quite clear on it. We thought, we've hired an attorney to help us through this stuff, so we've only talked to him like once. I'm not really quite clear, but I'll talk to him again, get more of a clarification of what, we can do, or,
If I may,
just make a suggestion here. There's the TIF benefits for the town. The town would be able to shield some amount of its tax receipts from the state view. there's the TIF benefit for your company. And, whether the town pursues a TIF on its benefit or not, I think is separate from whether we pursue one on your benefit. What I haven't seen yet is what portion of this is your benefit. How do we separate the two issues? So we know what the town can do and various types of things, and we know that we would have to jump through some hoops and be very inventive in the way we describe some projects, how we would spend money. But the real question I think that we would like to see is, what is it that you're looking for? I mean, you're not just in it for the town, you're in it for yourself as well.
That is a great question, and that is in here. I know we're giving you a lot of material, and we bite our tongue about whether we give a little material or a lot. We give you a little, you got lots of questions, stuff's missing. We give you a lot, you got a lot, you still have questions, and you can't find what we give you. I would draw you to page 4, and to a lesser extent, page 3, to answer your last question. I think, page 3 is an important sheet to us, because when we first proposed the project, we sell the energy from this project very, very inexpensively, below 4 cents a kilowatt hour, which is less than the wholesale cost of power. It's very inexpensive. We bid that competitively against dozens of other projects, and we had to estimate how much taxes we would pay in order to prepare a competitive bid. Just what this sheet shows you is what other participants in the same procurement, what they bid, and we've normalized the projects of different sizes, so the number you want to think about is the total tax payments per megawatt. And you see some projects are paying as little as $30,000 a megawatt AC, and we're proposing $94,000. And then there's a group of projects at 121. The project at 120 failed, so that project died. And economics, I'm sure, were a piece of it. So just to put in mind, we're on the higher side of solar projects that were in that procurement. Now, page 4 is your. Yep.
Let's go back to page 2 here. So
Yep.
I understand what we're seeing is we see size in megawatts, AC megawatts, in blue, and you're 16.2.
Yep.
Total tax payments in dollars per megawatt AC.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that you're bidding at the state level, is it?
Well, it is, because it's a line item in our proposal that we all have to disclose, because we have to state what economic impact we're going to have.
Okay.
So this is all information that the bidders were. You are heavily incentivized to reveal this accurately, because you got scored for it.
I see.
So I would say this is reliable information.
So you earn money for having a larger tax impact?
You do, yes. It's not on a dollar for dollar basis. So if we thought we could pay 0 in taxes, then we would bid 0. But we're incentivized to bid a realistic amount that we think we will end up paying, and that's where we arrived at that number.
Okay. I mean, so I understand what this.
So what I think this helps is understand, if you, certainly from our perspective, trying to be competitive in this industry, that, our proposal is rooted in something that we think is fair and normal, and help us be competitive. And if we'd have proposed higher taxes, we would have increased our operating costs. Taxes are our highest operating cost, even with the TIF. And if we proposed higher taxes, we might not have gotten an award, because this is actually the highest priced project that was awarded in that segment too. But slide 4, I know we're going to have a long night ahead, or you have a long night ahead of you, and I'll help you get there. Slide 4 shows, after the tax shift losses, and these are all very straight-faced estimates, but we'd be happy to discuss further with your lawyer or the assessor, for that matter. But after the tax shift losses, the town's net revenues from the project would be less than $500,000. and I want to talk about the timing quickly because it's very relevant, but, so less than $500,000, let's call that $500,000, 492,000. And with the TIF and CDA, we're proposing that the project gets, in total, 24% of the taxes back, and the town would get over $1 million in additional payments. So the $1.5 million, that's the town's net revenue over 20 years. And I do want to show you something on page 5, which is very important. The green bar is what the town gets paid each year for 20 years without a TIF CEA. And what you can see is that you get paid a lot of money for 3 years, and then the tax shift comes into play, and you get virtually nothing extra in taxes for the rest of the period. Whereas with the TIF CEA, it's naturally much more even. Now, we are able also to essentially move these amounts of money around. If you think the orange bar is the TIF CEA, if you said we need $1 million right now and we don't want $20,000 a year 10 years from now, we can advance those payments using essentially an interest rate. So if you said, hey, we want to build a trail or any project, and it's no good getting paid for that over time. We don't want to issue a bond. We don't want a bank loan. We could advance those payments in time. And one example we gave in here is that we would pay, instead of paying, I think it was $1.5 million over 20 years, we would pay $900,000 over 3 years. You get $300,000 each year for 3 years. And then essentially our future tax payments would go as, amortize that overall payment. So, and all of this is not to say you should do it this way or the other, but there's a lot of flexibility that can be brought into these agreements.
If I may just jump in, because I want to make sure that your question is directly answered about TIF versus CEA. And first question to ask, and I think
I asked that question.
Well, you said what's in it for the developer, developers not in it for charitable purposes, and the developer in this case is a business, has put in a bid, put in a competitive bid that relied, unlike many of the other projects, on in fact contributing more back to the communities than the other projects. That was the philosophy of Glenvale. If you don't do a TIF, leave us out for a moment and just assume we don't get anything back, and you're just making a decision, all right, you've got all of these revenues coming in, what's the best choice? Do you put it in a TIF district and get $1.5 million and find a way to spend it within the law, or do we get $500,000 without restriction? And if you can find a way to spend $1.5 million within any of those categories, you're going to be better off. And the next question is, why should we share any money back with the developer? That's the credit enhancement agreement piece. And I think what Aidan said a moment ago is important, which is in coming up with the financing element for this project, it assumes that it would have a certain amount of tax payments. And that assumes that there will be a credit enhancement agreement. So if you remove the credit enhancement agreement piece, that changes the assumptions that went into the bid to the PEC. So the whole package is really important to make sure that the revenue streams that went into the PUC bid are maintained, which in turn allows for the $1.5 million in additional revenue. So it really is a package. If you pull one out, it's not as clear whether or not the revenue stream will be there. So that's a long-winded answer of your short question.
Something in your hall.
So, in our model, it's 24%, of the payment. And in the simplest arrangement, it's the same amount every year. But as I said, we'd be, we're interested in getting past any particular sticking points. I mean, ultimately, I think Jim really condensed the question at hand. Do you want the extra money? Do you feel you can spend it effectively? So whatever the sticking points are, other than that, I think we can get past everything. So, do you want to have the valuation? The valuation has to be variable, but you can fix the payments contractually, very specifically, which essentially means the valuation won't change our payment amount. We prefer a fixed valuation, but it doesn't matter. In the sense of, we can come up with the right agreement for the town. And similarly, you can fix the payments based on what you think the mill rate will be, or you could let them vary each year depending on what the mill rate actually is. So all of those things are details that both council would be able to work out. But I think that the essential question Jim asked, but it's 24% is the answer to your question. But if you said, we really want to get paid as much as possible in the next 3 years, and we could do that, and we would essentially be paying too much tax for several years, and then we pay a lot less in the future years. And because it's part of the financing of the project, we'd be able to do something like that. So, as you asked the question about a project, as Jim suggested, recreational projects, great flexibility to do. So, think about what projects you haven't funded the last few town meetings that you would have if you had a generous benefactor who wrote the town $1 million check. Would you have done something with that money that you weren't otherwise able to do? The public safety improvements, as long as you can draw a nexus between them and the project. And
what's the initial value of the project estimated?
I believe our calculations, I think it's in here. So we're showing $12.25 million. And that, that's our straight base estimate of what the value would be.
Page 9.
But it's on other pages. It's on page 12 as well. That's the initial cost of the project, adjusted for things like tree removal and site work that isn't part of personal property, and then adjusted for the federal investment tax credit, which is on the project. So these are their conventional ways that you adjust the construction cost. So the portion of the project that's personal property is we're showing is $12.25 million.
Tell you that we've gone through this list of projects that the town might have that would use a tip if we were very creative and could get the project through the state. Might be fire station improvements, buildings, what have you. But we're nowhere near being prepared to put a program together.
So, about a month ago, I had a brief conversation with Greg M., your counsel, who I've known for a while, in terms of how we move forward to the next step. Ultimately, the town has got to decide, can we use the money, and if so, how? We're happy to facilitate that conversation, but that really is a critical piece of being able to move forward. I've sat in your shoes before as a municipal official. I've talked to people in your shoes like me who've come forward and said the town should have a credit enhancement agreement. And the first question is, okay, what if we can't use the money for the general fund? That is exactly the right question to ask. But if you can find a way, the statute is set up to give you some flexibility to use it, and that's $1 million for this town to use. So we're happy to help facilitate and hope that the town does look for those opportunities. And the other thing I've sat in your shoes and considered is, all right, why should you share the money back? Why can't we keep all the tip revenues? And that's a valid question. It's one that the people of the town will ask, and they're going to want to know the answer to that. And the answer is simple, which is Glenvale, who is the developer, was as lean as they possibly could. And you can see that tested in the bid process, how they maximize the amount of tax revenue to the town as compared to the others. And that was what they needed in order to still be a low enough electricity price to get the PUC bid. So they tried to bid as much property tax revenues back to the town as they could. And I think that the PUC process really tests out the reasonableness with which their numbers are developed.
Add one other thing, Jim. I'm never in favor of wasting money in any venue, but just, there's an extra $1 million here to use. So it's $1.5 million of restricted funds. This assumes we pay over 20 years, just as we would normal taxes. It's $1.5 million of restricted funds versus $500,000 of unrestricted. And you know, just to bear in mind, you know, you look at your annual budget. You spend a few $100,000 on roads. You spend a couple $100,000 on the fire stations and equipment. You've some allocation for Sand Pond, and presumably some projects that you haven't been able to fund that don't show in the town report because they weren't voted on or they weren't funded. So, you know, I think there's a lot of room there to think about what we do with that $1.5 million. Only, again, I'm not in favor of wasting money on any venue, but if you got, you know, a third of those dollars out the door effectively, you're breaking even. If you got 40% of those dollars out the door effectively, you're ahead. You get 80% out or 100% out, the town is way ahead. And that's, in that venue, that's $1 million that you spent efficiently that you and your neighbors didn't have to pay in taxes. So we want this to be successful for a town, but there is a meaningful opportunity here. And, you know, by the time we get to town meeting next year, if we continue discussion, you know, we could have some of those projects identified. And as I offered this evening, we're willing to shift the payments around in time if that makes it a more attractive proposition. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much, you know, the broadband initiative might be. It doesn't sound like it's that much money, but if you needed to pay $100,000 and in broadband, maybe even subsidized by $10 a month everybody's bill, that's the type of thing we'd be able to help with.
Well, personally, I'd like to get these projects and kind of break them down and see if there's any benefits to them. And Big Six here, we can get more clarification of the fire station improvements. You know, if we can.
So there's some stuff here that just,
Not within the law.
Right.
sidewalk improvements.
No.
The only sidewalks within this town are at the post office is in front of the whistle stop. You know, when you mention is doing trails and stuff, how are you gonna use money, this kind of money on private land? these trails are all private. You know, do you guys ever think of that?
I don't think town roads or anything that we can spend money on.
Well, they already said this before we put it.
So, I understand that the general idea of the TIF, but, we looked at it in pretty good detail, and the one place where we might be able to justify it is a fire station improvement, with the idea that we're going to try and, increase the business, attractiveness of all of them.
There's a,
Telling you, we don't know that any businesses said they're not coming here because we don't have good fire stations, but, you know, that's kind of what we're struggling with, is how could we actually justify this? And how would we actually use it? And, this town is not like many other towns.
Ultimately, we wouldn't presume to tell you how you all should spend the money and where the best investments are. And that has to come from you, that has to come from the town. And we're happy to work with you, your council, et cetera. I think Aiden said it well, which is if you have $500,000 in definite expenses that you would otherwise have done, you've now broken even than what you would have had you not done the TIF district at all. And then you come up with $1 million of things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise done, but they're going to add value back to the community. And whether it's a grant program to help improve trails, there are bridges that are out that private property owners could establish as long as the trails are for public use. I'm just thinking out of the box here. But those are the kinds of things, and whether it's that or anything else, those are the opportunities for the town. My name is Jim Coleman. I'm on the front page of or second page of the second page.
The last page, your
Yes.
email, Jim's email, phone numbers on the last page also. It would be natural to me that by the time we got to town meeting, which would have to approve hopefully the select board's recommendation, you would also have some projects that you feel are a good allocation. You wouldn't have to commit all of the funding because it comes in over 20 years, but you do have to know that as that funding comes in, you got to spend it on an approved expense. You know, if you look at the amount of money that was maybe getting appropriated for Sand Pond every year, that makes a dent in the payments that would be happening in the base case proposal, which we're paying about $35,000 a year in those latter years. So that by itself, I think you had somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 last year, and let's say that escalates over a 20-year period such that it's north of $10,000. There's your $1.03 is already being dislocated. It's not a simple commitment, and we recognize that, but it's also $1 million spent, you know.
And
Grows legs and walks out of the town and never comes back.
It's spending on dirt roads, but we were told we couldn't spend on dirt roads. You know, we got a lot of dirt roads in this town here and stuff, so.
Yeah, and was that in conversation with your council or somebody else? Yeah, and did you say you can't spend money paving a dirt road? I'm not the expert here, whether you have Jim, but that seems to me like a pretty straightforward application. I've been through town where roads are being paved.
Well, sure, but you just can't use TIF money for it. I mean, you just have to read the statute. And there's some very limited areas where you can spend the money.
Right, you can't spend money on just plain old road improvement anywhere within the community. It has to be limited to the TIF district. But I believe you can spend money on at least around the roads. But that's something, again, we're not going to come out
the road, but we already have trees there. Again, we're struggling to make it work. I'll tell you, quite honestly, I like the idea, but I just can't see how it's going to apply. And,
What's the boundaries of the district?
well, it's what we define.
You gotta establish it.
Yeah, but, I mean, you can't use the whole town for this.
No.
So TIF districts are powerful tools, which is why Maine law limits how much of a town can be encumbered, how long a TIF district can last, because every dollar that goes to support a TIF district comes out of the pockets of every other community in Maine. So that's why the legislature has limited this tool, because it's a financing tool that every community is entitled to if they choose to avail themselves.
Yeah, but I'm a little bit upset with it myself, because it's a tool that might be easier for a bigger town to use. Very hard for this town to use. And so we end up, as you say, putting money into the pots of the towns that can.
So I think probably that we.
I mean, it's not for you to solve.
Right. I mean, I'd go to the legislature tomorrow and fix that problem. The legislature is very purposefully been very limited in terms of how TIF money can be used. So I would imagine tonight we're not going to decide on here are the three things.
Right.
But maybe what we could do is over the course of the next couple of months, try to get more specific. And, again, the ideas are not going to come from us. We're happy to help as much as we can to assist the community or and to be resources. Your council can be as well, and we're happy to help that happen. If you can do this, if you can come up with those projects that make sense, the town is clearly a winner.
I just want to help you keep an efficient meeting, but 100% agree with what you just said, Mr. Cole. Like, it's not, everybody pays taxes, everybody avails of these state programs, and it's administratively harder for the small town. That just does not strike me as the least bit fair. And, we'll do what we can to help, keep digging. I mean, we would have loved to come here tonight with a project to say, hey, you should do this, but not in the arrogant sense, but in the helpful sense that you could do this. But, that's, that's a tough job for us to do effectively. We'll keep working on it.
No, I think we did make some progress in it, and that is that you're looking for 24% of the total tax revenue that you would pay.
Correct. Yeah. And I also just, again, want to draw your attention, as it's dense, but just look in pages 8 onward, 9 onward, or 8 onward actually. We just suggest some of the ways that we could be flexible. So we could bring payments forward, so you get the majority of your payments in 3 to 5 years. Say you wanted to build a large project. We could adjust the term. That can be as long as 30 years, but most of the real impact happens in the first 10 years. I think that's a bad deal for the town, because after the TIF expires, you're going to earn very little in taxes, and you're not going to have the TIF revenue either. But it could be shorter, and you can also vary the reimbursement amount, so it could be, it could be less in the early years or more in the early years. And some examples of these different options is in the later pages.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much
for your time this evening. I sort of gather, I know we've met a few times, I kind of gather you don't have many more questions tonight, is that right?
Right.
So, should we try to meet with you in this venue again? Would you consider nominating one board member and council to have a further discussion? I mean, what could we do tonight to try and, make progress and ultimately, you know, figure if is there something that the select board would recommend to town meeting?
I think we ought to talk about it. I don't think this is the time to go to the people and tell them you want to tip this town. So we gotta kind of work at this a little, Mike.
Yeah.
If you go out and start talking to residents in this town right now, and which I've done already, and you mention a big solar project coming in, and it's gonna require tax breaks, they ain't very happy.
Let me, if I could, the other solar projects don't pay taxes. We do. We're the only project that's gonna pay taxes.
That's not what they're telling us on some of these other ones. And some of these other ones are telling us they're paying, was it, $2,000 a megawatt?
Yeah.
Or the other is that the state reimburses us 50% of the tax.
It is a long story. Some of them are offering to make ex gratia payments of $2,000. Just if you compare that to what we would pay, you know, it's a lot less. And yeah, the selling point, you know, isn't what's in it for the developer, it's what's in it for the town. You know, you want to, you know, ask that same person, how would you feel about us collecting an extra $1 million that we don't have to collect from you and your neighbors over the next 20 years? Because that's the deal on the table for the town.
When I first became an elected official, I used the term TIF as the way you give money back to a developer. Most people think of the term TIF as you're giving money back. But that's not accurate. TIF is not giving money back to a developer. TIF is a financing tool for municipalities that doesn't involve giving a dime back to a developer. It's a financing tool. A credit enhancement agreement, that is the definition of the term of sharing money back with the developer. So it's important to draw a distinction. The town decides to go forward with a TIF. That is a way for the town to keep more money for itself. In this case, $1 million more, even if you're sharing 24%. If you weren't sharing anything, that number would be even higher. The reason that we're proposing sharing just 24% is it's a shared opportunity. That more than $1 million that comes back is enabled by this project. And in order for the project to go forward, there's a sharing mechanism through the credit enhancement agreement. So it's important to kind of distinguish those two pieces. So when you talk to people about a TIF, that's just simply a financing vehicle where you keep the money.
I think we understand. You're on board.
I didn't understand it originally.
Yeah, no, we hear that same sort of feedback in other communities. It's a little bit complicated. Certainly, people who aren't elected officials and aren't on the board might know less. But you know, I'm on an appointed board in my community, and you know, ultimately serving on that board, it's my job to make decisions that are good for the community, and they're not necessarily always going to be popular, and we have to be ready to be able to explain ourselves. But you know, that goes with the you know, the privilege and the mediocre salary that you get for serving. So, but you know, we sincerely think this will be good for the town if we can help you spend the money efficiently. It makes the project more certain, or enhances the ability of the project to be financed, which even the first $500,000 isn't guaranteed. You only get that if the project gets built. And our margins are thin, and it's a very competitive industry. The smaller projects, they sell their energy for 8, 10, 12 cents a kilowatt hour. We sell ours for 4. So we're making a lot less money every kilowatt hour than the smaller projects. And I know you're not the planning board, but we think this is a very well-cited project. I know that hasn't been the case of other projects. We think we've conceived of the project in a way of being really, really good. Really good for the property owners, the town, the environment, and, you know, we've been thoughtful about how we went about things. And I know that, you know, solar will become a controversial thing because not all projects are as well cited as ours, but we've gone about things, we think, the right way, and, you know, we're trying to come up with good components. Everything we do, whether it be the land rates, the local jobs, we really are trying hard to do things the right way.
So, I guess just to pick up on Amy's prior point, which is, in terms of moving forward, if there was an individual appointed or staff that we could talk with outside of the meeting today to help us move forward, that might be efficient. To the earlier point, we're not ready to go to the town with a proposal, but we'd be happy to work with folks offline to help move forward if that makes sense.
You want to talk about it more on the workshop? Yeah, we'll give you a call.
Thank you so much, we really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
I have a question. Who are we communicating with? The whole group, including Lisa Rappin? Do I email you? Do I email to you? How does that work?
Yeah, you know, we're all very closely
Okay.
working together, but Lisa is managing the TIF negotiations normally. She's on vacation this week,
Okay.
and I'm staying, I normally live in Boston, but I'm staying in Maine for a few weeks, so, but I'm the owner of the company, so, I can get involved and help, and, you know, I think some of the, some of the discussions get stuck in things like, do we need to have a fixed mill rate, or can we do it with a variable, things like that. Lisa has naturally wanted to confer with me after the meeting, so we can all be involved. But you don't have to worry about one of us missing something if we're all, Lisa and I sit in the same office, and Jim's our counsel, so one of us and Jim you've got a quorum.
Okay.
So. And thank you to the audience for sitting through.
Thank you.
Thank
I have a question.
Yeah.
In previous meetings, there's been some talk, and there's a list of items that we can choose from for these projects. Is that correct?
Yeah. You mean like eligible things for the TIF spending?
I think
Yeah, I think that's what you mean. There are, yeah, there's statute and guidance. And
what I saw on that list, a lot doesn't fit this town, it fits Westbrook, but not our town. If we don't pick a project, don't spend the money, we don't get the money. It goes away, right?
I don't know that it goes away. The council would be much better to answer that. But you can't spend it on an ineligible use.
So we're allocated a certain amount each year, and if we don't spend it, we don't get it.
Right, I mean, I think to the earlier discussion, the town would not want to move forward with restricted funds if it couldn't spend those funds. So it's a critical step to be able to identify an eligible fund.
Okay, here's the hard question. You're so willing to give away so much money. What's in it for you? What are you saving for yourself? Nobody says anything about money about yourself. Where's the pipeline? Where in the pipeline are you saving money for yourself?
So I think we addressed that, but do you want to address that?
We did say, Wes, it was 24% of what they,
24%. He said 24%.
And I can also add, the reason it's so specific, we have to decide in a competitive bid, where dozens of projects bid, we have to decide what's our land cost, what's our taxes, what's our construction cost, what's the cheapest we can sell the energy for and still forecast the profit. So we picked a number and we disclosed it in our bid, and it's in the public record. You can go to the PUC's website and you can tie the numbers back. So we're only presenting the same information. So we made a decision, and that's where the source comes from. So why aren't we looking for 28% or 30% or 60%? Because we committed in bid spending this much money on taxes.
Okay.
And you can see some of the other developers are getting 80% of the funding back. I don't think that's fair. Help solve your problem on how to spend it, because there's a lot less money to spend, but, no, that wasn't how we approached it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good night. Good evening.
Good night.
All right, tax bill information from Bob. Scott.
I don't know if you folks read it, but I put together something to put into the tax bill to explain to people, first, that the tax bill that they have is not necessarily all they owe. Well, it's a common problem that people are foreclosed, and they say, but I paid mine, whatever. But they're still way behind. So, just a reminder, the other is a short explanation about what's coming, which is this transaction, fiscal year, 6 months, and there will be a transition tax bill. And that's part of this, PR campaign, I guess, that we're gonna need to have to get through this process.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, Ben, did you read that?
I did.
There's some holes in it probably, in timing or?
No, then you're all right.
I think all right.
I mean,
Just all right.
I always have an opinion, so, but I force myself not to give it. To be honest, I mean, it's good, it's fine, you know, it's nothing that's gonna affect it. The only thing I would recommend, I guess, is, because this is new to you guys, the town, I mean, you may have already thought about it, and I've said it before, so that's fine, I just wanted to reiterate, whatever date you're choosing right now for your 6-month payment, the new, you know, you're gonna do a budget in November, you know, and vote around by November, whatever, and the next little 6-month commitment we're gonna do, whatever you decide for that payment date, you should probably stick to. Because everybody's probably already acclimated to an October 15th, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, right, October payment. So if you chose, in April, most towns do an October 15th, April 15th, 6 months, but I mean, if you wanna do something because you're gonna change your town meeting, whatever date you pick, stick with it, that's what the date is going forward, otherwise it's gonna cause a lot of confusion, I think.
Yeah.
But we're good to go on our end. I mean, I've had to think through it, which has been great, because I've never had to do this before. You know, most towns are flipped already.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a good exercise. I don't know, it was a good exercise. I think you do need to have, a discussion with Deb, because this involves her in a totally different way, and just my time with her during commitment.
Yeah.
Is something that needs to be thought through, well thought through, because you're gonna have potentially liens on this commitment you just signed tonight.
Yeah.
So that's 12 months from January to December. And then she's gonna have liens potentially on the 6-month commitment, right, from January to June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's gonna be back, our role is gonna be the same time period for commitment, I don't see that changing too much, you know what I'm saying? But now you're covering a different, now you're gonna start covering fiscal year, so now she's gonna be on a brand new lien and foreclosure time period, so she's gonna have multiple to track, and you wanna be organized then, because I get out of hand fast, so I just want to throw that out there, it's a conversation she and I had.
Yeah, so, mid-April for a, tax commitment time then, mid-April or a.
Not commitment, yeah, I think there was something there, how it was worded, I would've probably cleaned up.
Tax bills being due, mid-April, sometime,
Right.
date in April.
Due, commitment and the due are two different things.
Yeah, right, but, all right, we can nail that down, I think, you know.
So like we just did commitment now, due in October or whatever, you know, so, yep. And I think we're gonna try to do the commitment, because we're not chasing permits, there's no other information to put in. Valuation's gonna stay static as of April 1st behind us. So, depending on what you guys come up with for a budget,
which I do have something on the table for that, to think about, and I gotta get your number. Basically, your mill rate should be cut in half in 6 months. You know, if you, apples to apples, if your budget was cut in half, mill rate would be cut in half, valuation stays the same. One thing I think I'll throw on the table, and I think I had an estimate done for you guys at one point. I got off on doing other commitments, so I got off sidetracked. But I'm gonna contact Vision. I think, Dwight, you were the only one that, no, Bob, you were there, the original, conversation we had, way back, you were there.
Where's our?
Danielle was there. There was conversation about your database being online and accessible online. That is an additional cost to the town, but Vision can host that. So, one place you can go to, I'll give you the website, just be easier, maybe I'll just email you, but I can give you the link. You can go straight to see what other towns are, even our towns. You're the only one out of our towns that's not posted on Vision's online database. But any taxpayer could then go online to Vision's database, you know, online database, state of Maine, it's even as simple as there's a picture of the state of Maine. Click, find Baldwin, click on that, look yourself up. I don't want to really throw a number on, but I'm thinking it was like 1,200, but I'll go back and I'll get a fresh number for you guys. Maybe you want to throw it on for your 6-month commitment. 12-ish, 1,200?
For a 6-month commitment?
No, that would be for them posting, but let me get you a real number. I'm just going from bad memory.
For a year?
Yeah.
That would be so awesome.
And that's what I was thinking about that, where you're gonna do that 6-month commitment, and probably a little more aware of your budgeting process right now. I'll get you a real number. You don't have to throw it in there, but if you wanted to, at least you'd have it.
Okay.
Can the fifth pay for that?
Oh, good grief.
Thank you. All right, so, I'll clean this up a little bit, and, get printing one off for each tax envelope. Maybe put it on the town website,
All right, we got some clean.
Jim?
Yeah.
The only thing that popped in my head was April 15th is our taxes, and then now we're gonna get taxes. I know it's only half, I got it, you know, so it's less, it's
Right.
not quite as scary,
Yeah.
but, you know, I mean, we own a lot of trees. It's a pain in the butt. Just saying.
Okay.
And I don't know, I know there are a lot of other people that have an awful hard time paying their taxes.
Right.
You know, for them, it's a real struggle, and they got their property taxes on top of that.
Yeah.
So by having it in October when it was, then it wasn't quite as bad, but, you know, this is breaking it up, I know, I got it, but I'm just saying.
this is, just a little bit of clarification. This is a one-time shot. Let me explain, this transition tax bill is a one-time tax bill. The following fiscal year that starts July 1st,
Right?
you will get your full bill, in September, whenever the taxes are mailed out and due. And you can pay the whole thing there,
Right?
but you don't have to. If
Right.
you decide to wait and pay the next one on the 15th of April, or whatever that date is, that's your money,
I
it
got
has
it.
been issued, I think.
Understand. But, so, the clarification aspect that you're looking at, I think if they could address that in some way
Yeah, okay.
to make them a little less overwhelmed. Thank you.
It's gotta work, because we're the only town around that don't do it. You know?
That's why we're such a lovely town to live in.
Misery loves company, but
There'll be some hiccups,
they will.
but I think,
Yeah.
you know,
But I mean, I
it's-
appreciate what Bob is doing by explaining in the process.
well, I think, you know, to follow this through one step farther, just like, in the Shopper's Guide, you see where Standish, you know, they publish a little excerpt, and that way your second payment is due for your tax. Now, we're gonna have to do that same thing, just to prompt them,
Right, right.
you know, keep them straight.
Yeah, I think that'll help. Hopefully this will make it easier for the town overall.
Yeah.
Besides on the administrative side though, I'm just trying to think how many pages are going with that tax bill. We do our fire department subscription, we'll do the insert, we'll do the tax bill. Isn't there one more that we usually do for? Yeah, I'm thinking sickness of a mailing, I guess,
Yeah, the rescue,
rescue, the tax bill, and then Bob's insert. We don't do anything for you, like a homestead or anything, so, okay.
No.
I just want to be mindful of the sickness, because you don't want to get too crazy on. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's it.
I mean, the thing is, you could do it every go in or something.
Right,
Separate it out.
Find all three.
yeah.
Something else to think about, that just popped in my head, is, you know, it's not something you think about right now, or the next 6-month commitment, because you're doing, when you get your bill, you're getting one letter saying you owe this. But something to think about, some of my towns currently there's an additional cost if you were to send another bill out in the spring, but a lot of towns would do the tear off. You know, this is your fall, this is your spring. You are already?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. All right, okay, we got some, claims to sign.
There was a typo in the last one you guys signed, that was one of them.
What's the matter?
You paid everything.
Cash.
Yep. And the other one, the registry rejected, the liens had to be released on the previous owner, so they had to be a quick claim releasing the lien to the previous owner, and then another quick claim going, in the town to the new owner, so that was the third one. Okay. We were releasing the liens to the new owner, and that name had to be cleared first.
Yeah, done.
Sam Pond.
You got a house on it yet?
I've had a couple of calls asking what the plan is.
All right, reminders, Tuesday, August 24th.
Good.
That's correct. That's that one. That's already done. Thursday, August 26th, 7 p.m. planning board meeting. Saturday, August 8th, planning office hours, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m.
And we have a staff meeting next Wednesday at 2. And you have a special town meeting Monday to Friday.
Right.
At one point, you had wanted me or all my staff to get here for the staff meeting. Do you want that still or no? Because we haven't attended for a while, but I mean, would that be helpful?
Yeah, if you.
I don't know whether I can make it, but I might be able to.
Right, yeah, I mean, if you get a chance to, I'd be great. Yeah.
Right, Sam, does that still work for you too?
Yeah.
That's there too, okay.
For now.
Yeah,
Ben, you got anything else?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. You know I'm still sitting here. No, I have quite a bit, actually, in regard to Glenvale. I did not think that this was their presentation for the fifth. That was a totally different discussion, but I do want to throw a lot of things out there for you guys to think about. These will be conversations that I will probably have at some point.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going anywhere. I do believe that they will be a taxpayer in your town.
we'll see. But to clarify some for the, audience as well, they threw out a lot of different terms, a lot of different stuff. As far as a variable mill rate versus a fixed mill rate, okay, by main law, you will have a fixed mill rate. That won't be variable just because that's who they are, and that's something to negotiate. So I got a lot of questions how they come up with their valuation, and they've gone from 9 million to 12.5 million today, is something that they threw out there. So that's fluctuating and changing.
Yeah.
My questions to them will be how they came, what approach did they use, cost approach, income approach, obviously Salesforce is not gonna be, could be, I don't know if that's what they're gonna use, right? But I wanna know what approach to value that they use, because they keep going around 12 million. Now, I understand there's gonna be additional costs, so let's throw some on the table, and I didn't want to corner them tonight or whatever. Didn't realize he was the owner, he's a good person to have. But you got tree growth withdrawal penalty, okay, there's a cost, right?
Yeah.
So you get the overall cost of the entity, which they're saying, it's 9 to 12.5 million, okay, throw that on the table. There's design development, but that can actually go towards valuation for taxes. So we can look at that at this special cost of development and design. So I'm having a hard time using their own numbers to qualify what was filed in the Registry of Deeds as a Department of Environmental Protection Department order for Glenvale, where it specifically says on page 2, under number 2, financial capacity, the total cost of the project is estimated to be $31 million. So that I'd like to have an explanation on. I have a lot of questions because they're actually throwing real tax numbers at you guys, and this is what they're gonna recoup, this is what you're gonna get. What mill rate did you use? Because they obviously are using an estimated mill rate. I feel like you're talking to a used car salesman.
I get that.
So there's a million questions on the table, and I guess one thing I had looked at, Bob was here the other day, so I actually have thrown out there, one thing for you guys to look at, you can look at it yourselves. What has been the valuation change in the town? Because you're worried about losing funds from the state, right, for schools and things like that, and that's where they're saying, hey, you got a sieve, if you don't do the TIF, you got to do the TIF, otherwise you're going to lose it. Okay, so what has been the valuation change in 4 years worth of commitments with Cumberland County, when we started, to where you are now? And you did have the reval, so yes, but whatever, that still jumps your valuation up, right? Versus what does it cost you to make your school payments? What are you losing out the other side? Okay, because we looked at it, and it was, I believe, 21, 22 million, right in that range, if I remember correctly. I don't have my function billions of dollars this week, so I apologize, but you're in that, you increased by, say, even 20 million. So you've increased by, what I'm saying, conservatively, the value of that project's gonna be. They had thrown on the table 21 million, not 9. And so, what we did find was that you gained more in taxes than what you've actually turned around and paid the school. And I did not do a year by year, this is that, because your mill rate would have changed. I says, just for fun, just for throwing some on the table, let's grab the lowest mill rate that you guys probably have ever had in our 4 years, was 13.
Yeah.
So we took that valuation to the lowest mill rate, and it still came out ahead on the taxes. So that's something to consider, because it's kind of a lot of double talk, what's going on.
I read too much, and it makes me skeptical of even what I know. And after our discussion, I said, well, what can be wrong with it? What we found was that the $25 million worth of increased valuation that the town got to actually hang on to about 50% of the increased tax. But then I realized that this has we're only comparing 4 years, and I know there's this issue that the state actually looks back 4 years.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
So there's a lag back there, and there's a hit coming. And so, I don't know.
They're 2 years, actually, they don't go 4 years, they go 2 years back on the state valuation.
Is it 2?
Yep.
I know towns where they lose a mill or something, and they look for special legislation, or,
Yeah, no, sudden and severe. I have one that I negotiate every year, absolutely, yep. That would be the other thing I would say, because them coming into this town are gonna be, whatever valuation you wanna argue, it's gonna be one of your largest taxpayers. Right? So, so that's stuff that
They won't hold on to it long, they're gonna sell it. My guess is. That's what happens. 4 years, they're gone, right? Whoever it is, we wanna sit down and have a conversation with. I will be 706A in, sending the 706A out to these large entities, and just for continuity, those that are even exempt, you know, show me what you got, I want you to do, you know, fulfill what my request. Then, somebody like them can't say, well, you're picking on us and you treated us unfairly. No, we treat everybody exactly the same.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot. The other thing that I'm watching them throw on the table is personal property, personal property, personal property, okay? Personal property, multiple things. They're gonna depreciate. Personal property, whether it's a solar, if they wanna go that route, or whether it's a desk and a chair sitting in somebody's small business, it's gonna be depreciated on the same schedule based on the age. Okay, tapping out at 30%, X number of years down. That's just where we bottom out, 30%. So you're gonna lose a lot more faster than the actual, discounted cash flow depreciation, which should be being used for solar. My other major issue is exactly what you discussed tonight. It's personal property, and they decide, screw you, I'm not paying my taxes. Where are you at? Small claims court. Or, because we have the ability to look at that, it's fixed to the ground, we can choose, it's real estate, especially an entity that large, it's real estate, it can also be lien. So, the other side of that is, they walk away, I mean, not that this will probably happen, but you wanna have all those safeties in place, they walk away, whoever the landowner is, we can also tax the person in possession up. So, you've got all of that if it's real estate, so that's what I'm looking at, every one of them is real estate, real property. There's a lot of things there. Like I said, I didn't want to really get into a tug of war with them tonight.
Right. Yeah.
We will at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff and stuff that's being filed registry of deeds. A lot of places to start looking for real documents, not what's just coming out of their mouth
Do
evaluation.
you want a copy of this?
I have it.
You have it.
I don't know if you have time, but, we got an executive session coming up.
I'm here. What do you need, going after, or?
Yeah, well, as soon as we'll call it very soon here, we're just about at that point.
Let me, go around the room. Bruce, you got anything?
Not really, we got one of the safety grants back, and money for that, and the other one was accepted last week, and they expect that either this week or next week, so.
Good.
And the money we applied for was close to 50% reimbursement, so. That will help us.
Yeah.
The truck issue I had, went in, had it fixed, brought it back, put it in the barn, took it back out this weekend, liked it back. So, that's all. But I got hold of Kevin Warren, he come up with his computer on it, and we're gonna try it. What happened, he thinks where they throw the engine apart, that they emptied the antifreeze, and it showed the antifreeze code along with the depth code. We're assuming they didn't take the depth code out, you know, the injector. We're assuming they didn't, I don't know that, so we're gonna keep an eye on it. I wanted to drive it today, but I didn't get a chance, the only way I got down there was 2 o'clock before I get back here.
Could be worse, it happens, I'm trying to skip. You know, if it is an injector.
Yeah. So, we'll keep an eye on it, go from there, and then fall, we're working on the study.
Yeah.
I guess we got another one tonight, I haven't, I just glanced at it, the matrix.
Yeah.
I just glanced at it. So, we're moving forward anyhow.
Yeah, good.
Oh, yeah.
Chad, that's happening down the pond.
Well, I've heard we've had some issues down there with jet skis. And I guess one of the jet skiers splashed people on the other side of those camps, on the left side.
Yeah.
And they also hit their kayak, which was tied to the dock. So, somebody had called the game warden come down, caught them. And then, I think we are probably ought to put some signs up, so that, they don't come in anymore.
Come around the beach,
Come in, it was right there, jet skis.
I don't know who do that.
I don't know.
No, that's a state sanctioned
That is-
boat launch. No, I don't think we can stop anybody from doing that.
Yeah.
We can stop them from going on the beach or something,
Yeah.
but from using a boat launch, I don't believe we can.
Blues, I think the blues are good.
Yeah.
They should stop people from coming in too close to the beach, but as far as the boat launch or any part of the other, pond, you know, we really have no say out in the middle of the pond what they do.
That's why you call the water.
That's why they call the water, yeah. They'll have more say. If you see somebody out there messing around or harassing people in jet skis or any kind of watercraft, you call the game warden.
These are the same jet skis they had trouble with in the past.
Yeah.
Can we just confirm with the state that we can't have an ordinance restricting jet ski use? We just ask that question, make sure we can.
I think we can, is it Long Lake?
There's some small lakes where you can't,
Yeah.
but we tried to get the horsepower rated on Sand Pond, couldn't do it. And we tried to get it dropped down to like 10 horsepower motors, and we get shot right out of the water. And the state wouldn't let us do it. So there's certain things that are out of our control.
Yeah,
But I would think that if it was a public beach, that they couldn't come in there and flash people like he's talking about, like flashing somebody's kayak.
Yeah, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
But as far as the launching at the boat
Right,
launch,
but I thought that's what he was.
that was at the other end of the pond. That one.
Right, well, I understand that.
Yeah. Things are pretty quiet down there.
Slow down.
Good. Probably this week is gonna get busy again, it's getting hot.
but tomorrow, the next day, we visit.
Yeah. Mary, you got anything?
No, thank you for everything you guys do,
Thank you.
a lot of work.
Norm?
Two things. Number one, Dwight, I believe you made a serious omission when you described the sidewalks in our town.
Did I forget one in town?
If you go down to the bottom of Depot Road, right in front of Bob Jewett's old wooden warehouse, the lovely yellow one, there's 10 feet of sidewalk.
I stand corrected.
Thank you, Norman.
That's not an extension of the bridge.
No, it's its own sidewalk, about 10 feet, and it's ramped up and ramped down at the end. So, you know, you bicycle, wheelchair, walker, rollator, whatever. On a more serious note, and I'm speaking partly about the Channel 8 condition. Over the years, I believe the planning board has been pretty judicious in assigning conditions to projects. I think we've generally been a lot easier than most municipalities. However, the only people that can enforce them are the selectmen. If the work of the planning board means anything, the conditions have to be enforced. And actually, none of you guys were on the select board. It was, you probably remember, it was quite contentious. And that condition was kind of a quid pro quo to buy what little love they had in some quarters of the time. So I'm requesting that you follow that up and talk about it seriously.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Thank you. Joe?
Bob, last meeting we talked about the River Road and my sister-in-law Margaret's, but I'm the kind of person that then I get all nervous and waiting.
Yeah. So, we talked to, or I talked to, David Laurie, and he said, if you wanna put something in front of her, you need to have a deed that gives the town a right of way. He said that's the softest way to do it. You could declare eminent domain and other things, but Danielle was talking or going to contact the engineering firm that gave us the drawing, and said they provide a description that we can put on a deed.
Great.
And then we're going to produce that, and,
Great. She has problems with mail delivery, as you found out. She had to put on a mailbox, out front with a lock on it. And, part of the problem is people coming by and stealing mail, to steal all the mailbox. And I'm thinking if the mail was undeliverable, it's possible that, she's having problems with the post office too. But she says all of her neighbors have problems with the mail.
It was never returned, that was the thing.
Decatur, Georgia.
Nothing got returned, so.
So,
We're making progress with it.
it's great. No, I just want to know because if I talk to family members, I should talk about this. And so I'm trying to hold back until I really have something to say.
Yeah. Well, that's the avenue we're not going with.
Great.
Is
Great.
just get a right of way to use it.
Yeah, and it's not, you're not talking about an acre and a half maybe?
1.2, I think, is what I estimated. But, if you really look at it, it's not usable land. It's down over the side of the hill there.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'll do what I can.
Thank you. Kathy?
Library's doing very well. The Sonic Lodge has a book for bikes program. We've drawn 2 winners, 1 boy, 1 girl, given them the information. So on Saturday, we will divulge those names to the happy recipients. And then there's also Camp Read-A-Lot, which Sharon Bieber will be at the board meeting on Friday and draw the names for the winner of the tent, which is the grand prize. And we'll announce that on Saturday at noon as well. I'm sorry that she's gone, moving on back to the public library, or school libraries rather than public, but that's what she had to do. I'm just grateful for all that she gave this town in time and effort. She's done a whole lot, got us $2,500 from the state because there was money, COVID money, and we qualified for that. And she has reworked our website and done wonders for our system. So we're going to keep on swinging. We've got 2 possible contenders. They're not skills at the level that we would need, but they are at least something that will get us through.
Yeah.
So we'll figure out which one of those is better candidate for the position. That's the best we're doing it today.
Doing pretty good. Last?
Yeah, I got something to say. A couple meetings ago, I think, or maybe this last meeting, a couple meetings ago, we were talking about, I think it was the Tobago solar site up off of Burnell Road, and a fire access, fire road to it, and so on and so forth. So that got my curiosity going, so I wrote a question to Frank Robbins, who's the chief honcho for Regional, who built the Mayetta pit solar. So I read where was that? The town staff had a conversation about fire danger at solar farm and the fire department response. So this is my thoughts and need your comments. There's not much to burn at a solar farm site. Panel, glass, metal, etc. doesn't burn well. If an electric short circuit or perhaps a hot spot ignites flames, well, the only item to burn is the wire installation, right? Therefore, inverters and wire connection bunches is the fire hazard. Dry grass can be a fuel too. Grass doesn't burn in the winter, and the spring and fall is wet season. Summer could be a problem. Is lightning a problem? Am I missing something? Is there data concerning percentage of fires occurring and or putting out fires? Water is not the way to go with electricals. So on and so forth. So he answered. This is a common question regarding fires at a solar site. Basically, EMS firefighters should deal with the solar farm fire the same way they would deal with an instance where a car hits an electric pole. Don't touch it. In the case of fire, you would let the site burn, or if intervened, you would assume that every piece of electric equipment is energized. Lightning protection is present at the medium voltage equipment, and there are lightning arresters on the pole. There is surge protector equipment on all the electrical equipment, such as inverters, but if lightning strike hits, our operation and maintenance team would have to investigate after the fact and replace the damaged equipment. Does this answer your question? Well, it didn't quite.
I wrote back, I said, is the basic verbal material only wire installation? He answered, yes. So, wire installation.
So, we don't have to go there, right? We'll just put it on the CAD system, and whenever it comes in, we just don't go. We just don't go, right?
Have you ever talked about,
And the
about
other thing
the locks, do you have a way to get in there? There's a combination. Two locks.
unless the other guys do, that's all.
Okay.
My thought on that is, I mean, yeah, you can't
I've tried them both, they work.
fight the fire on the ground itself, or what about the perimeter of the,
Well, it's.
you'd have to have set up.
It isn't that, if somebody gets hurt, you're gonna put a rescue up through there, is that in the winter time, or is that gonna be in the summertime? Let's get realistic about it. I mean,
Yeah.
You wanna be prepared for the worst, and not be, too shocked when you pull in.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hindsight, it's bad, right, something like that. And you're right, when there's wires down, who has to go? Town crew doesn't go, and we have to go.
Right.
And we have to sit there right next to it, and have everyone else, running into it again.
Right, yeah. That's why I say, yeah.
So we just, if we can put it on the CAD, if we don't go, we just follow the window, we pick them in, we don't go. And I don't think that's right.
No.
No, and I mean, it's just about that. It's just, dumb answer.
Yeah, I get you. Anything else, Wes?
That's it.
Danielle?
You think to ask her this time, she's right in the line.
I know, she's not sitting back in there.
I like this angle.
Well, we got anything else?
Executive session.
Executive session.
I will make the motion.
Okay, executive session.
Move that the select board go into an executive session pursuant to MRSA section 405, 6C, considered.
Thank you.
Actually, I'll refine that a little bit. Information that would get premature disclosure would impact our bargaining position.
Well, we had all the conversations, I said, you have a phone number, you can run it, I'll get it.
Get a bunk somewhere I can.
Yes, we'll get down the road, we'll do it. Absolutely. I'll make the better.
Thank you. Bye, Emma.